On this week's episode of The Grid, we're talking, does getting paid matter? Scott's off teaching a seminar, so we'll be here joined with floral photographer Jackie Kramer and landscape and travel photographer Karen Hutton, and it all starts right now.
The Grid is brought to you by Tamron. Check out their 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8 lens. It's for Sony full frame mirrorless. It's awesome. Go to tamron-usa.com.
And ProPhoto, the light shaping company. Check out the ProPhoto B1X, powered all the right places. Go to prophoto.com/US.
And Platypod, the tripod alternative that is changing the world. Everybody has a Platypod. You should too. Go to platypod.com.
Hey, Grid Nation, we are here. We're here with The Grid, and we have joining us special guest. We have Jackie Kramer here in the studio. Jackie's here shooting a Kelby 1 class, right?
I am.
So what are you shooting with us?
We are doing artistic macro floral photography.
Cool. Awesome. And we also having joining by Skype. I'm not sure if she's there yet. There she is. Hey, Karen. We have Karen Hutton joining us, which I can't hear her yet.
Good to see you guys.
But maybe they're going to put her into this IFB. So, but anyways, I can see you. Hi, how's it going? So Karen is a Kelby 1 instructor, and she has a bunch of classes on Kelby 1. She's also a Photoshop World instructor as well. So want to get their takes on and us all talk about this topic of, does getting paid matter? And what do I really mean by that is like the value of photography, the value of creating visuals, the value of almost that awe, in photography. What is that value? And does getting paid for that really matter? So before we get into that, I just want to kind of introduce everybody. So Jackie, if you could tell us a little about like, what do you do? What do you shoot? That kind of stuff.
Okay. I was born and raised in Florida and always wanted to become an artist, but my parents had other plans in mind for me. So I decided to go and get a degree in chemical engineering and became an engineer working for the Environmental Protection Agency for over 20 years, almost 30 years. And I transitioned recently into my photography, which I never let go of, except for a short hiatus between film and digital.
Cool.
And I had an early start on my bike with my camera that my dad brought back from Japan, an old Niker mat. I was 16 and I used to ride my bike to the botanical gardens and to the beach. I shot birds and flowers, and I'm still doing birds and flowers. But my story in a short nutshell was that I expanded to people when I got breast cancer in 2010. And I started to take more classes. I went to Photoshop World and I learned Lightroom, and I began to take pictures of people, right? And everybody said, but your flowers, you got to do flowers. So my flowers expanded into weddings and portraits, but I never let go of my flowers. And now they've kind of overshadowed everything else.
So you got into the weddings, but then now the flowers are kind of pulling you out of the weddings, right?
Right, because I got into people because I wanted to do portraits of women who had been affected by breast cancer.
Okay, cool.
And that was a door that opened certain avenues for me, but it really also led me right back to the flowers. So here I am.
Cool. Well, and then Karen, maybe just sharing it with everybody a little bit about you and what you do.
All right. Do we have audio?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You're in my head.
Oh, my God. Modern technology is like 2 thumbs up.
There you go.
So I'm considered to be a travel and landscape photographer. I just consider myself to be a photographer and an artist. Let's see, you wanted to know what we shoot, what we do. I'm actually in my house trailer right now. I'm on a road trip down Eastern Sierras. I had a week in between commitments, and I said, I'm getting out. I'm going to go shoot. So I'm doing that. I shoot Fujifilm. I've worked with them for a number of years, but I really love the cameras. And this week I'm shooting a lot with the GFX, which is a lot of fun.
Cool.
And I just sort of travel around the world and speak and talk and teach and write and create art. And there you go.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. So you're creating art, and there's your website there. You're creating art, travel, landscape photography. You're creating art with your floral photography, your wedding photography. Myself, I kind of do the same thing, but in a different genre. So I shoot space and Milky Way and that kind of stuff. And that's really what I'm into. But I think what it is we all have that shared passion of photography, right? So capturing
Yep.
images, and it doesn't matter again with the subject matter, you know, I mean, what it really is that we're trying to communicate the inspiration, the beauty in the world around us. I mean, just in different ways, you know, with me, that usually happens with explosions and technology and the stars and the history of the stars and the Milky Way and all that stuff. You, flowers, Karen with her landscape and travel photography. So again, we've got all this, right? And we do this as photographers. We find our passions, we do it. But then one of the things that comes in inevitably to everybody's career is, you know, basically, does getting paid matter? So at what point does getting paid matter? And I want to go into a couple backstories, which kind of get us into this. And then I want to kind of dive into the topic. So the backstories I want to get into, one is something that I saw this a couple weeks ago. It was actually a Kelby One instructor. So it was Tim Wallace. So Tim Wallace is he shoots cars, automotive. He's kind of, I guess you call it high-end transportation photographer. So he had a client, or actually he didn't have a client. He had it was a interior designer contact him. And I want to read you guys here's the article actually on Petapixel. But this is the email that he got from the interior designer. It says, "Hi, I have a very important client that I'm currently working on to remodel their $12 million coastal retreat home. They love your classic car work and would love to have this print in their hallway as they enter the home." So you think, okay, awesome, great. So Tim's thinking, all right, payday. The next part, they unfortunately don't really have any budget for this. However, so I was wondering if you'd be interested in sending me the high resolution files if we did a print, so there's no cost to yourself. So obviously when I read that last part, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, you know, so they set up, the interior designer set up, they're doing a $12 million retreat remodel, and they have no budget for paying for Tim's work. So then Tim responds, and I love Tim's response here, Tim's response is, "Hi, oh wow, that's so cool, and thank you so much for the kind feedback regarding my work. It's such a tempting offer to supply them with my work for absolutely no benefit to my business whatsoever, and it's hard to know what to say. I think the fact that they have the revenue to purchase a $12 million second coastal retreat home, which suggests that they are the type of people who feel they deserve the very best but shouldn't have to pay for it. Unfortunately, I don't really do business with cheap people, and your offer clearly shows me, whilst they love my work, they don't respect the hard work that goes into creating that. Therefore, I have to respectfully suggest that you stick to some overpriced driftwood art that interior designers are always trying to knock out on the wall instead. I'm assuming that you're getting paid. Do they love your work too?" Kind of, you know, just doing a little. So lucky you. It's such a fabulous project. You're so lucky to be in their presence. Good luck with it all. So basically, you know, I read this, I saw this, and I was like, you know what? One, that happens more often than not. I know to me that happens a lot. I don't know about you guys, but I do get a lot of that kind of tone with people asking for your work, asking for your images, that kind of stuff. So that leads me into the second thing here, which I wanted to bring up. So a photographer that I met at Photoshop World. So we've all been to Photoshop World. I met at Photoshop World through Dave Williams. Her name's Sean Elizabeth. Right, here's her website. She does great work. You know, you can go check it out at seanelizabeth.co. But she posted something to her Facebook, which I thought was very telling. So she was on a job site in the UK, and she saw this ad here. So it's basically talking about all the things that they want this person to do, and this is a job ad. But down at the bottom, it says, please note, this is an expenses only role. We offer no compensation, right? So they're saying, I don't want to pay you, but I want you to do all this work for me. So that kind of, brought me to this thing of, why is this happening? Because when you get to it at the end of the day, we wouldn't go up to a lawn, somebody who's maintaining your lawn and say, hey, can you cut my lawn for free?
My hairdresser wouldn't do it.
Yeah, your hairdresser.
I'd give him good recommendations.
My roof's leaking. Would you fix my roof for free?
No.
So why does this happen? So I think that's the question. Why does this happen in photography? So Karen, maybe you could tell us, what's your perspective on this?
Well, there's a number of perspectives to take. One of them is, there's an education portion of, photography. There's three things. One, photography has exploded in the last few years, and a set of rules of engagement did not come with it. That manual somehow got left behind. So I'm going to take because I find it all very irritating too, but honestly, I've been through all this in voiceovers because I do voiceovers professionally. And this is exactly the same thing we've encountered in voiceover. So there's a certain amount of education and a certain amount of culling that one has to do. I never find that sniping at people educates them, although it really feels good. I got to admit.
It does.
So number two, when I get asked to do something for free, I say, it sounds like a wonderful project. I'm sure someone's going to very much enjoy it. Here are my rates. Here's what I charge. Here's what I do. If you should have a project in future that meets these criteria, I would be happy to work with you. By the way, I get paid up front. And, that usually eliminates 98% of them. But the 2% that stay and that say, oh, and they do sometimes. Oh, I didn't, silly me. I didn't realize. I'm happy to do that. I have a new client for life.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
There's that.
Yep.
So
definitely.
so there is that. Some people don't need new clients or don't want them. And they can afford to, riff on these people for not knowing better. And there's so many people who don't know better, and it wears you to a nub. It really does. But I always take the longer view and either ignore them, because if they're really out of bounds and I'm just like, I just want to shoot myself at that email, I just won't respond because I'm not going to educate them. All I can do is tell them, this is my world. This is what I do. When voiceover, that was number two. And then number three, in voiceover, there have been many stages and another stage is still happening. And people say, oh, you can't make a living because everybody's giving away voiceovers for nothing and everybody's got a mic and everybody's a freaking expert. Well, if I'm doing my job correctly, there's only one person that can do what I do. And my perfect client, and there may only be two or three, on any given week or month or whatever, is going to hear my voice and go, that's the voice, or that's the photography for my project. And people it's always easier to say, oh, there's just so much of fill in the blank out there. And these stupid people, and they're so dumb, and yes, they are, but are you running a business or are you having an encounter session?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
I'm being a little harsh. I'm being a little harsh here because I hear it so much, but I'm like, are you an entrepreneur or aren't you?
Yeah, and, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually treat it very similar to you, but I want to hear, Jackie, what do you think?
Well, I had an experience, and while you were talking, it reminded me of it. So I thought I would pull it up and read you an email that I got.
Yeah.
This was an interior designer who put art into big spaces like hospitals, and she had purchased some from me for some big hospital up in the Jacksonville area. And I think we had done business twice before. And then I got this email, and she never really paid me what I thought it was worth. But, I thought, I'm just getting my feet wet here. Okay. So then she sends me a email. Hi, Jackie. I hope this finds you well. We are designing for a hospital and have specified some of your images for use on the furniture manufacturer's head wall. This is a piece of furniture that is mounted to the wall permanently. The image would be approximately 20 by 30 on acrylic. The budget for this rather unusual placement is meager, but we will have additional opportunities throughout the hospital and want your name sprinkled as frequently as possible, i.e., sign your images digitally. The fee we've been granted, I can hardly say this, are you ready? Is $25 per use of the image. Are you open to this arrangement? Presently, we have specified you for one image 4 times for a total of $100. This is just the beginning, ... We are also suggesting you for the footwalls, cabinet doors, and nurses' stations, so get ready. Please let me know if this is acceptable. And I was almost speechless, so I didn't answer right away. I had other priorities. And a few weeks later, she sent me another email. Hi, Jackie, just checking in, blah, blah, blah. And my response to her was, I would love to work with you, but, and then I think I encapsulated here. I'm sure as a fellow businesswoman, you understand how important it is to value our work. I would love to work with you in the future on projects with clients with budgets sufficient to support original and/or unique artwork and photography. Also, just to let you know, I have still not received payment for the other purchases. ...
There you go.
And there you go.
Well, and I think there's a couple things. So, like, one, I see that happen a lot. Is that I would call that the dangling carrot, what they did. Right. So they're dangling a carrot in front of you going, well, if you do this, and that's for exposure, that's for the, there's going to be future work, that kind of stuff. So there is that dangling carrot as well there, but then there is that whole thing. And that's where, again, my perspective on this is similar to both of your perspectives on it is, I will always, I think it is, and Karen hit on the head, it's an education thing. It really is. I think it comes down to an education thing. And I do think, and that's why I want to get this issue out there, that we as photographers can educate people on this, right? And
Absolutely.
If more photographers just educate people in a nice way, I mean, I get where Tim was coming from. I probably wouldn't have been as brash as Tim, but Tim's Tim, that's how Tim's going to treat the situation. I get that. I probably would have, again, used it as an education moment of, like Karen say, it's here's the link, here's my rates, here's the, they're asking for a print or they're asking for a file. Here, you can go purchase it here. I'm not telling you have to. I'm just saying there's a worth to it. When they come back, I was expecting it for free. Well, it's like you said, I need if when you have a budget that will work, well, then come back, no problem. And if more photographers do that, then we wouldn't be in this situation.
So I have 2 sequels to this.
Okay.
Somebody else in her company didn't realize that there was this history, and they put my images out for another job, and it was already committed. And I said, well, I would be happy to provide you with those images, but you have to pay me in advance for these and in arrears for all the others. And they were kind of backed into a corner. So I got paid for everything at the price that I wanted. But now the newest sequel is some of these very same companies are putting out promos, like call for art in my local, what is it? I think I saw it in the Ponte Vedra Cultural Center newsletter, call for art. And these are coming from interior designers asking for images. It's like a contest and you want to win it. And all these photographers who don't do it for a living are so excited to be selected that they're getting the jobs. And so now these people are able to get big jobs, put them in institutions, and get the images for free.
Okay, well, I think that we have to take a break, and I think that's a good segue there, because I think when we come back, I really want to talk about, this stuff with taking it a little step further with this whole topic. So we're talking about, does getting paid matter? We'll be back in just a few minutes with Karen and Jackie.
Is the tripod dead? Sure, a tripod works for basic shots, but who wants to be basic? You don't need basic, you need blockbuster. And that's a job for a Platypod. The Platypod is your go-anywhere, do-anything flat tripod base. Its compact design helps you discover unique angles that you could never reach with a typical tripod. So, whether you're bringing up baby, driving Miss Daisy, or with your beasts of the Southern Wild, You can capture big budget footage and stills for a fraction of the time and money. So go ahead, shoot the next Rocky or Birdman. Or on the waterfront, the Platypod is equipped to grip uneven surfaces and hang from just about anything. When tripods go low, the Platypod goes lower. Its flat base reaches the lowest possible angle, resulting in truly inventive shots that can't be replicated with traditional equipment. And if you feel like adding a dramatic overhead angle, the Platypod has you covered. Just strap it or screw it in, and you're ready to go within minutes. The Platypod is constructed from aircraft-grade aluminum and titanium. Yeah, the stuff Air Force One is made of. So it's durable enough to travel with you from Chinatown to Casablanca and everywhere in between. If you only take the tripod, the story ends. You wake up the next morning with nothing but basic footage. Or you could take the Platypod to a museum, or on an elevator, or strap it to a tree, or hanging on a bench at church, or put it on the ground and get incredible blockbuster footage. Who are we kidding? You should totally take the Platypod. The tripod is not dead, but it needs a sidekick. The Platypod.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by B&H Photo, the professional source since 1973.
Well, hey, Gridsters, we're back. I wanted to give some shout outs here. We got people all over the world joining us. We got Travis from Germany saying hi. We got Brian from NYC. We got James saying hi. We got Daniel over there in Zurich, Switzerland saying hi. We got Rose from New Zealand. We've got John from Southern California, Matt from Indiana, Steve saying hello. We've got all these people saying hi. And then down, we had a couple comments that I wanted to read. We got Steve Bauer saying, people love to see your work. They're just not willing to buy it. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I just think, again, this is why I want to bring up this topic. I think part of it is an education phase that we're in with photography, but then it also leads to Gary's comment, which it happens because so many people have a camera. Simple supply and demand. That is a big thing that's happening with photography. There is just a flooding of the market of people have a camera. And then there's what is a good image? What isn't a good image? That's going to happen. But then Sandy's saying a lack of understanding of pro photography. That's a big thing of people not, we've become desensitized. It's kind of the same that Karen was talking about with voiceovers, with video work, with photography. We've kind of been desensitized to what is professional or not. I don't think things like YouTube really helped, where we have all this content out there that people are producing and it's kind of like down and dirty and cheap. And we've kind of lost that sense of what quality is. But at the end of the day, I kind of wanted to now shift the conversation because I don't want to spend this whole hour just talking about, we kind of brought up the topic. This is the thing. We all would say, yes, there's a value to our work. But now really what I want to talk about is how do we change that value or that perception? One of my favorite quotes is actually by one of the guys that I think really inspires me, right? Elon Musk, who really, I mean, again, I'm a tech guy. I get that. But he said a quote that it sticks in my head. It is the value of beauty and inspiration is very much underrated, no doubt. And I think that kind of sums it up, that there is a lot of stuff in life where the value of the beauty and the inspiration of something is really becoming undervalued, right? And we need to kind of flip that on its head. So my question to you guys, and this is where I want to ask, is where's the value in your photography? So Karen or Jackie, which one, if you want to just take that, like how do you establish value in your photography? Where's the value in it?
Well, I mean, you have to decide if you're running a business or not.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're running a business, you do your research, you figure out what you want to do. And it's not just take pictures. It is, you're working, if you're going to run a business, you're supplying a need. You're supplying the solution to a need. Your client might not even know what that need is yet. Mm-hmm. But if you decide that what you want to do is, supply my client with inspiration when they're lacking it and their work suffers and they're not feeling good, but my work and working with me can, bring them to the next level. You have to profile that person. You have to do a lot of homework to figure out who your ideal clients are, what they're doing now, what it is, what problem you solve. I mean, just because we're artists doesn't mean everyone's going to come flocking and want to pay us a lot of money. And we shouldn't whine when they don't if we haven't done our homework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
so how do you?
I could go on, but I'm going to end right
how
there
do you,
for the moment.
Well, but how do you how do you establish that value with those clients?
Well, okay, let's say, they're now doing research on, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was awe today. So there's actual physical research now on the effects of awe. And, there are people in trades who are suffering from burnout, who are suffering from, a tremendous lack of inspiration and lack of, something wonderful to look at. And you can start to quantify the effects of the lack of the thing that you offer, if you can, if you have the imagination to do that. And then you can start to promote by working with me, by having my art, by, like I worked with an ad agency recently, and I've worked with ad agencies for years. And if you have those chops and can turn work around quickly, can talk that language and supply what they need right now, in the time frame they need, etc., you become invaluable. So you find what you want to do, and you learn what makes you invaluable to that client, and you do that. It's taking your work and putting it to work for you.
Yeah, that's a great one. What would you say, Jackie?
Well, you talked about value, and I feel very valued. I have a group online that has floral photographers from around the world. It's called Florography, PHLOROGRAPHY. We're on Facebook, and it is an incredible community, and that is what inspires me. It really feeds my soul. We support each other, and the value in that for me is manyfold. It is because I primarily earn my money from teaching workshops and doing speaking engagements, and I feel like my job is really to inspire other people so that they can do their best. They want to hang their images on their wall, not mine. And I'm always so excited to have somebody purchase one of my prints, but I'm equally thrilled to be able to inspire other people to do their work. And I'm a really big advocate in living your legacy as opposed to leaving behind a legacy. I can leave a computer or a bunch of prints behind, and I don't think anybody in my family or my friends have an inch on their walls left to hang anything. Yeah. But my real goal here in my photography business is to sustain myself financially and make a living by touching other people and giving them the tools and the techniques so that they can create better images, and at the same time really enrich their lives, make everybody feel like they've gotten something out of it that makes them a better person, that connects them with other people. And so I really feel like what I've built is a community, and we've all grown and expanded not only our network, but our photography skills. And so that's really my thing, is asking people, why do you do it? Is it for the money, or do you do it because you get some enrichment, some passion? Are you going out and actually in nature getting some exercise and enjoying those experiences? Or do you, what really feeds feeds you. And I really like for people to be more introspective about that. And it all kind of comes back around to me in my business. So that's sort of how I look at things. And if along the way I get a chance to sell some images, then I'm really ecstatic about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and I don't want to like have this topic be like, oh, this is only for photographers who are, or only for people that are making full time their living on photography. When I'm talking about this, I mean, there is people that photography is their side hustle. Photography is their Uber or something like that. Photography is just something that gets me enough just to pay for the gear, because we all have this gear acquisition syndrome. Or there's even people where photography is not a business, photography is a passion, but still got to understand that with your passion, there is an investment that you're making. You're investing in yourself. It's not that you're investing like Karen's talking about. If you have a client, you got to give what the client needs. But sometimes a lot of us that are doing photography, we're doing it for ourselves. So, but you got to look at that and say that there is a value to that. The value is time. You have to assign a value to your time. And that's a big thing. I mean, that's really honestly why we created Kelby One. I mean, if you really look at like why we created Kelby One, it was to help people get time back. It was to help people to get better at their photography and make wonderful, fascinating, amazing things, but to do that very affordably, but to get their time back. Because a lot of people get sucked into this time suck where they're doing a lot with photography and they don't feel like they're making progress or they're advancing. That's also a factor in here. There's a lot of people who this is just their passion, but you have to look at it as there's a value to your time.
Absolutely. And I can give you a testimonial myself because I've been shooting since I was in high school. And it wasn't really until 2010, 2011 that I went to my first Photoshop world and I learned Lightroom. I made it my goal to take those 3 days and take everyone's class on Lightroom. And it was Scott Kelby's book and now Kelby One Training, Photoshop User, and now Lightroom User magazines online. That is my one-stop shop. And I can't second what you say enough because you can spend a lot of times and spin your wheels going out and searching for this. And then what you find is you're not really in control of your learning. YouTube and what you get fed by YouTube is in control of your learning. If you really want to take charge, I have a list of the classes that I recommend to my people, and it's also, it saves me time, their time, and it saves money for everybody because most of my clientele are 55 and older. They've already had a career, so they're really not interested in selling their photography, but society tells them that they should because success is measured in dollars and cents. I believe it's not measured in dollars and cents if it's not your business, but don't undermine those who are making it a business by giving it away. But it also isn't measured in likes and comments. Mm-hmm. It's measured in what you do and how you feel and what kind of reward you get from it. And then what is your legacy? How can you use photography as a medium to make this a better world, to send a message?
Okay, cool. Well, we have to take a break. When we come back, Karen, I want to ask you about, I want to ask you a question of, isn't there value in the awe? And that's what I really want to ask you when we get back, the value of the awe. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes with Karen and with Jackie talking about, does getting paid matter?
Hey Kelby One members, join me for my new class, Post-Processing Milky Way Photography. I think when it comes to post-processing, this is really what differentiates good and bad Milky Way photography. There's a lot of things that we can't do if we just expose for one shot, that we might want to expose for multiple shots and bring out that color in the Milky Way and the depth and the dimension. We've gone out and shot the Milky Way. Now we're going to take it into post-processing, really make those photos pop. And we're going to go all the way from why it's important to nail that white balance in post, all the way through to building up our exposure settings, our contrast settings, our colors, and then making that Milky Way come alive. And then we're going to go through noise reduction techniques. We're going to even go into stacking, and as well, we're going to go into blending. The post-processing in Milky Way photography is really the great equalizer. It's the thing that you can go and you can take a shot from just a shot to something that's wow. So come join me at my new class on KelbyOne.com.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by Canon.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of The Grid by subscribing to Apple's podcast app or iTunes. It's free, and we even have a special audio-only version too. So sign up today.
All right, we are back, and we're here with Karen and Jackie. We're talking about does getting paid matter? And really, we're at that point where we're saying, well, really, honestly, certain points it does matter, but in most cases, it doesn't really matter. It's more about what it is to you, but then I'm trying to establish a value to that. So really with Karen, what I want to talk about isn't the value of photography in those awe moments, in that awe, and maybe you could kind of expand on that. And what's your thought on that?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, as you know.
Yes.
And when you say, I have a question for you. So when
Yeah.
you say, what is the value? Are you holding it to dollars, or are you expanding
No, we've moved
that
on
to...
from that. We've moved on from dollars. We've said, dollars are, while important, it's more about what's important to you, right? And what speaks to you.
So when you start talking about the concept of awe, at its heart, awe is transformational. It is a transformational state. They're calling it the 11th emotion. There's a lot of quantifiable research around the benefits to the brain, cognitive function of the brain, the nervous system, the immune system, social interactions. It's so far reaching, it's crazy. Now, I think a lot of us know that because we go out and, I go out into nature and I experience that all the time. But the fact is that they're actually making it quantifiable and a true value, especially to, there are studies now being pointed toward many of the, as I said earlier, professions that are experiencing burnout and overwhelm, and that are, firemen, nurses, policemen, caregivers, et cetera, and trying to find a way to bring awe as a healing factor to many of these people. I feel that way about my work, that I'm always trying to bring it, whether it's in the photography itself, or I have taught these photography retreats for the last 5 years, which, the overriding theme was finding your artistic voice, or finding your voice, because I've been a voice coach for, 25 years, and voice is the same no matter where you apply it. And the transformation that I have observed people making through every one of these events, it wasn't just photography. It was almost like photography was the side benefit, that their photos got better. Where the real value was in the expansion and the transformation within, which of course then feeds out into the rest of their world and the rest of their life and everything that they do. And it's been the gift that keeps on giving. It's just been a phenomenal thing to be a part of. So there is some real intrinsic value to health, to wellness, to how we are with one another in the world surrounding the concept of awe.
Oh, and I can't agree. That's why I want to talk about that. I can't agree more, because I think that's where we were talking on the break, because I really think that what's interesting is, even though we all shoot different subject matter, I think that everything we do is kind of interconnected, that there is an interconnected thing between us. And that's why we can draw on those experiences, the beauty and the inspiration between that stuff, and that basically that those awe moments. Because I think for me, like when you're able to actually, like you were talking about, quantify that feeling that you have, that makes you feel like, oh, I am part of something bigger. I am part of humanity. That's a big thing for me. What speaks to me a lot of times when I'm sitting out there and I'm looking back at the universe and I'm seeing these billions and billions of stars and all this dust and debris, I see that same beauty in a rocket that's taking off and creating the same nebulous effect on Earth. Or I see smoke and flames that looks like patterns that would happen in clouds. And even we were talking about flowers and how there's floral structures that start looking like scientific equations, and all this stuff is like interconnected. and it's capturing the beauty of that for people. And I think that's where, when I've spent more time focused on that, I feel like that's made the value of my photography go up. And what it is, and that's the value for me, right? That's my value, is that I feel like, but that drives you. And then I think what happens is the more you do that, then people start seeing that passion in there. They start seeing the emotion in there, and then they're drawn to that, because we all want to feel that awe. We all want to feel awe-inspired. That's why it's awe-inspired. Like, that's what we want to feel. So, Jackie, I mean, kind of what's your take on this?
I would love to talk about this. I feel that when I'm shooting flowers, I probably experience the same types of emotions that Karen does in landscapes, and you with the rockets and the Milky Way and the stars. So I looked up the definitions for passion and euphoria. Passion is a strong and barely controllable emotion, and euphoria, a feeling or state of intense excitement and happiness. And I think that describes how I feel when I'm on the ground, immersed in a forest, shooting flowers or shooting mushrooms, or even in a botanical garden. I can go work through lunch, through dinner. I can go until it gets dark, and through scorching days. And, you come up for air and you go, you can hardly stand because you haven't stood for hours. You've been laying prone on the ground, upside down, or in some kind of crazy position. But yes, I think that's very, very true. And if you infuse your images with that passion, and I like to say I like to create art, but it's not always beautiful art. It's sometimes sad. It does have emotion, but it has a voice that Karen referred to earlier, and it's that intensity that I want to convey to people. I want them to have their own experience. I might have one experience, and my art might mean one thing to me, but to the viewer, I want them to have a visceral, not a visual experience when they view my art. And I like to. I'd like to believe that everybody is experiencing the same sort of euphoria whenever they're creating whatever it is, both in the field and in post-processing.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a saying, if I can interject. I end many of my speaking engagements with this one, because I think it's so important. It takes this whole conversation and broadens it to a much bigger playing field, which is, and it was spoken by Dante Alighieri in the 13th century, I believe, or was he 12th century? One or the other. He wrote Dante's Inferno, and the saying is, beauty awakens the soul to act. And I always say, if there was ever a time in history that we need to awaken our souls to act, it's now.
Yeah.
So there is more of an imperative when you understand that, perhaps the lack of beauty in this world is part of what's at the heart of many of the ills and the stresses and so on and so forth. And that beauty itself and awe and the transformation that happens and it's instantaneous. You don't work at awe. You don't work toward this moment. It takes you. And a lot of people don't want to let go of that kind of control, but it is completely transformational, and it's something we need desperately now.
Oh yeah, and I can't. Again, this is the topic. This is why I wanted to have this conversation, because I knew, given the things that we have in common, even though we shoot different things, I think how we're feeling about it is the same. So when we come back, I really want to talk about finding this inside of you. Like, how do you find this? How did you guys find it and ignite it inside yourself, ignite that passion, and also find your own voice, So when we get back, just want to talk about that real quick.
Photography is a performance art. So that every time I go to a location now, I walk away with a storybook of not only the hero, but vignettes. I love little scenes. I love component parts that make up the whole. more than just using your eyes. It's listening, it's feeling, it's making choices and determinations that bring your point of view into your image. Be specific, make really strong choices, take a moment, and even when you think you have the shot, question yourself and say, is there more? And take it as far as you can. The more we do it this way, in a really present way, in a joyful way, in a loving way, and bringing, you know, everything we have to the moment, the more it spreads into your image.
This segment of The Grid is brought to you by Platypod, the world's most compact tripod base.
All right, we're back, and we're talking with Karen, and we're talking with Jackie here, and we've kind of, you know, we started out with the value, you basically the, does getting paid matter, but then we're kind of establishing that while it does, it really doesn't. So how are we going to ignite our passion in order to then light that passion, so then we will get paid, right? So how did you, Jackie, start off by, you know, kind of igniting this passion for floral photography? I mean, to give people kind of like, and we kind of heard your story, but how would you suggest people starting and getting into really igniting that passion?
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing because, as I mentioned, most of my demographic are retired people. And I kind of thought, why is that? Why aren't young people photographing flowers? And then I look around, I've got kids. Young people start out with cell phones and some start out with cameras, and they're living. They're experiencing it all. They're experimenting. They're doing street photography. And then as they move on and decide maybe I want to become more of a pro, they might enter the senior high school market, wedding photography, and then pursue possibly wedding photography or Milky Way, for example, landscape photography. But most people don't really settle on a specific genre unless they're either making that business decision to be a niche, food or whatever, or they're doing what they like and they're traveling and taking a camera along with them. A lot of my people are doing flowers for a multitude of reasons. They either love flowers, or perhaps maybe there's physical limitations and they can only go out in their backyard, or they can purchase flowers and bring them into their kitchen table. So I think that for me, I have always loved flowers. And I want to say my mother probably inspired me in the beginning. She always loved getting flowers for gifts, flowers and bouquets. And I could ride my bike to the nearest botanical garden. I could go in the backyard and shoot flowers. I love the color. I love that they're alive. I like every stage of life. And for me, I get inspiration from a variety of sources, from art galleries, from Pinterest, from Instagram, from people in my group. We inspire each other. So I run themes every Friday. I run a theme, and they're always optional, but that keeps us going. That keeps the inspiration hot. And right now our theme is fiery. So talk about igniting.
There you go. There you go. So Karen, how would you, like help people to find that voice to kind of ignite their passion? How would you, just a little quick, kind of pointers for people?
Well, I sort of break it down in the quick department into little exercises, little drills, like taking some, like people often say, well, there's nothing to shoot, or I'm not inspired, or what have you. And I'll say, well, why don't you just take something you like or love, or something you look at every day, and then I have like a whole list of little exercises, and like almost like a scavenger hunt list. Shoot it 3 different ways. Same subject, 5 different lights, back, side, overhead, whatever, and start to play that way and make it really fun. And don't try to make yourself feel a certain way, or I have to find the awe. Just start to play like a kid and start creating these fun little series. I've done this in workshops where people were really tired, and I get a bag full of toys, and everybody picks one, and then I say, okay, Take whatever it is you have and shoot it 3 different ways: down, up, side. Take your your iPhone light and hold it to the side, overhead, and underneath it. Like, just do these different things, and pretty soon this whole room full of people are playing like kids and having a blast. And and this is the thing, as I always say, at the end of the session, you'll all be an artist. And they look at me like I've just grown 3 heads. And I say, it's because you all have a perspective. You just don't know it yet. We're going to play. Let's just play. And at the end, oh my God, it's amazing. Everybody's photos are good. Everybody's are different. And they absolutely reflect who they are. And it's just because we came up with enough of a limitation, which is very important in art, is to have limitations and enough games that the little kid gets to start to come out and play.
There you go. Yeah, and I think another thing that I'd add to that, I think helping you is, especially if you're not feeling that, getting into community like you're talking about. That's one big thing we are, here at Kelby One. That actually just came up this last week. We had a member who posted in our community, and they were basically really bummed out, and they were like, I just feel like I have no creativity. I'm just going to give up, kind of thing. And immediately there was like 20, 30 people that jumped in. And then we started asking, like, well, share some of your work and all this. And we saw his work. And I remember I posted a little thing on there. I looked at all your pictures. I went through all your Flickr account and your Instagram account. And like, you don't need to give up. You just need to push through. And there's something there. You just haven't found it yet. You haven't unlocked that thing yet. And I think that's where, but we all get there. I think we all have been at that place. But then being in a community that can support you like that, that's invaluable. And, that's really where, you can start as you build that community. That community can also be the place that can help you with the business side and with getting paid and with all that stuff. And speaking of that, that's where we have a bunch of questions coming in, that I just want to get to, because I want to make sure we value people's time they're asking these questions. We have Gary saying, no one appreciates your work unless they pay for it. So if they don't want to pay for it, are you a photographer? Well, I don't agree with the beginning statement that no one appreciates your work unless they pay for it. I think that people can appreciate your work even if they don't pay for it. Would you guys agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I would say a lot of times, depending on where my head is at, I don't feel appreciated till somebody's paying me for something. You know what I mean? If my head mindset is in a certain place, show me the money. I don't care if it's photography or anything. It just depends on what you have your own personal value tied up in.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, again, so if they don't want to pay you for it, are you a photographer? I think you're still a photographer. I just think that, there's probably something where you're obviously, whatever you're trying to get them to pay for, they're not connecting with the value of that. They're not like physical value, like this is monetary value of that.
And also, if they're a photographer, they might just look at it differently. They might not want to pay you for your image, but they might pay you to teach them. And they still might just put it on their phone as a screensaver. But I think that's a statement about society.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Karen?
All I was going to say is that then where you're going with that then becomes the conversation. I think it's 2 different conversations where business, if you're not getting paid for your photography as a business, then you need to look at the business and how you're going about it, more than, they don't want to pay me for my photographs. Well, then what are you doing with your business?
Yeah.
That it becomes that question. It really does. And I think where you're headed is finding value that can encompass that, but that also expands well beyond it into, how it contributes to you as a human.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, because there's 2 sides to that conversation. Absolutely. But I think at the root of that, one of the things with the paying, and maybe we went into this beginning or maybe we didn't, but if we really want to blame somebody for why people aren't paying photographers for their work, it's photographers. It is because there's people working for free all the time. And when those businesses come up and say, well, if you don't do it, we'll find somebody else. And then they take the job or, I had like all those sayings like, oh, we don't have the budget. Well, we'll still work with you. This is a great opportunity, exposure. like we only have ourselves to blame, because what happens is we take the jobs. If we take the jobs for free, that's the price the next person's going to pay. So every time we go down the line, it's just going to be free, free, free. So we're the only ones to blame, nobody else. We can't blame anybody else for that. So Steve's asking, yes, maybe they could talk about when they started charging for their work, what instigated it. So for you guys, like, what started you charging for your for your work, I'm assuming, or for your photography? So specifically for your photography, when you started charging for your photography.
You mean for the images themselves?
Let's start there. Yes.
Okay.
So when you first started charging for your photography, what instigated it?
A job. It was a job that came in. It was like, how much would you charge to use your photo on my website here and here? And I researched it and came up with some rates, and happened to take this particular client into account. She was willing to pay. She didn't have like $1 million budget. So what I came up with was the rate that I would like to charge, knowing that she couldn't, and say, normally my rate is this, but I understand, that you have a limited budget. So how would this work for you? That's when I want to work with someone who is respecting me and taking me seriously. Maybe they don't have $1 million, but I want to work with them because why not?
Oh, absolutely.
Like that was one of my first ones. So we came up with an equitable rate where my photograph got used and I got paid, and it was a good day, and she was ecstatic, and I made it affordable, and she told a bunch of people about me. So I got some other clients out of it.
How about you, Jackie? What instigated it?
What instigated it was when I was asked to put up a show, and I decided I had to have price tags on the images, and things were selling more then. This was probably, 15 years ago, or 10 to 15 years ago. Yeah. So,
mine, the same kind of story. It was, somebody hired you to shoot a wedding, so it's like, well, I gotta charge money for it. I can't do it for free. But this was also like 20 years ago, it wasn't the time when people were doing it for free, you know? So you're like, I gotta charge for it. What do I need to charge? So you do some research, you figure it out, you throw out an amount. And like Karen said, you usually throw out an amount, and then they're going to be like, I can't really afford that. And then you try to work with them, and you try to get down to a price. And then that just kind of snowballs into where you are now. Is you get to a point where somebody asks you tell them, here's my rate, here's what I charge. And if they say yes, they say yes. If they say, usually they don't say no, they'll just come back and try to negotiate. That's part of the game, is just negotiating. So, so John's saying, I can't read his question. So John's saying, also, how do they determine how much they charge? The differences between time to shoot to finished product. So how much you charge? I would just do research on that. I'd ask around to friends. A lot of times that was a big thing, was asking around to other friends. That's again why a community, I think, is so important, and being in a community where you can ask those questions. But then also just kind of feeling out what's your time worth. When you're starting out, you are going to charge less when you're starting out. You just don't have to charge free. I think that's a big thing. Like, even if you're starting out as a photographer, just don't do it for free. Charge like an equitable rate. Like, what are you worth? What's your time worth?
So for my weddings, I charge what I consider to be a reasonable amount for a boutique photographer. For my prints of my flowers, for example, I charge the same amount. To refer back to his question, he was wondering about the time involved versus the finished piece, I think. I don't really calculate how many hours it took or how many miles I had to travel to get to a certain place to shoot that flower, or how many hours it took me to Photoshop it. My images are all sold on a size basis. What size are they? And what kind of substrate are they printed on? Are they on a fine art paper, or are they printed with acrylic? That sort of thing.
So Karen, what's your thoughts on that?
Reiterate the question. We've evolved through our conversation. So I want to hear the question again.
It was about how much, how did you determine how much to charge versus between the time to shoot to the finished product?
Yeah. So it evolves over time, and it depends on, is it a print for a gallery? Is it images for a website? I don't sell digital images at all. Some people do. I, you know, it really, really depends upon each situation. And it's the same thing for voiceovers. Is like, what do you want it for? How many markets is it going to go out into? Do I have to pack up and go somewhere to shoot? Because then there's travel time and there's this, and everything is an add-on. If it's something in the collection, then it's just based on the media that it's printed on or the use that it's going to be put towards. So it's a very, my business anyway is a very tailor-made, very specifically oriented to the requirements and the budget and output and all that kind of thing.
Yep. There, and yeah, it does. It changes with time, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
It sure does.
So Bill's got an interesting comment. So he's talking about those who have day jobs and shoot sports photography is more of a hobby seem to be upset. The pros seem to be upset that they're giving something away. They complain about the ability to charge is becoming more difficult, which obviously we are saying it is more difficult. He shoots sports for a college football team, and he considers it a charitable contribution to the university. This is the best of all worlds for me. Shooting remains a passion and not a job. That said, how does one resolve this kind of complaint without charging or not shooting at all, or not shooting at all? So basically, how do you deal with you are giving away your services at that point? You are giving away, as he's saying, he's taking it as a charitable contribution. I think at the end of the day with that, like how do I deal with that? How to resolve that? I mean, it is a very hard one because I do think that there are people looking to get hired to do that stuff. And it more sounds like in that situation that you are just a fan of shooting sports photography and you're not really trying to make it a career. It's a hobby. But I can see where people get frustrated with this, especially other sports photographers who are trying to get paid, just like other landscape photographers that are probably trying to get paid, or floral photographers that are trying to get paid when somebody else is there. And it's like, yeah, because you're there, I can't get paid, and I can see. So I don't know if I do have a justification for that. I'm sorry, Bill. I don't know if I can justify that.
I'm with you.
I mean, what do you think, Karen?
Well, one thing that could, who knows? I mean, there'll be 10 people to shoot down this idea, but basically times are changing. So we have to too. So how do we want to roll? How do we want to help each other? What do we want our future to look like? So maybe, Bill's going to go shoot something that a pro photographer would not want to shoot. I don't know.
Like a high school football game where the high school football coach, because I know I'm around here where the high school football coach will like die for you to shoot a game because nobody will come shoot the games. They have to have like a student with a rebel shooting the game, that they would love to have a guy who's actually shooting a college game, because I guarantee you've probably got a nice lens too because you're into it.
Right. So maybe you make a choice. Yeah, maybe you make a choice to go do something a pro photographer wouldn't do. Or maybe you make a choice to go shoot and you're not really charging a rate, but you charge something. And then if you don't, you're like, but I don't want to keep the money because I'm not doing this for myself. Fine, then charge some equitable amount of money and donate it to a cause.
Or another thing I could even say, because, this is a good one. Hire an assistant to come with you that you're teaching the trade to, and then pay them. Like pay them with the money that you would charge, and actually tell this. I don't know if the university would even pay for it at that point. Be like, I'm free, but you got to pay. I've got an apprentice, and he's $150 a game.
Or
he's $100 a game.
Or you don't tell the university that. You just say my rate is $500, and you give it all to your kids.
Yeah, give it all to whatever. I like that idea. That's what to do. There you go.
This is. I get a little beefy about some of these complaints because they are the same year after year after year. And many of them lack the imagination of, then don't do it that way. Think of another way. Think of another way to make it valuable, to raise to use your imagination to tell a different story, to start to create a different reality selection. If this is not one that you like, create another one. There's 3 good ideas. Go.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
Well, I tell you what, we've definitely run over time at this point. I'm getting the wrap up the show signal.
Yeah,
but,
wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm getting the wrap up. But I really appreciate you guys both coming on. So where can they learn more about you guys? So Karen, where can they go visit more and learn more about you?
Yeah, there's 2 places. KarenHutton.com is home base, and that's kind of where everything's taking place. And if you're into Instagram, I'm Karen Hutton for something really new and different on Instagram.
Cool. How about you, Jackie?
Well, my number one place is Florography.
Okay.
And that is online in Facebook. We have about 62 or 6,300 members now, floral photographers at all levels from around the world. And we are an amazing community. I only allow positive feedback to one another. And that does teach people. We learn so much about what people get, what images get traction. And we also get inspired, as I mentioned earlier. I also can be found on my website at loveblooms.com, and that's LUV Blooms, BLOOMS.com. And then my wedding work is on JackieKramerPhotography.com. And my latest is my upcoming show here, Artistic Macro Floral Photography, on KelbyOne.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, guys, I appreciate you stopping by. I hope you learned something from the show, or at least at the end of the day, picked up something from it. We'll be back next week. Scott back next week? I think so. I think Scott will be back next week. So tune in next week. Scott will be here. Actually, we'll be just about to take off to go the next day to Photo Plus. So we'll be at Photo Plus the next day.
How exciting.
So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week here on The Grid.
Bye, guys.
When you need a tripod that is compact, that is portable enough to take with you anywhere, one that is adaptable to any situation, that will prove versatile enough for any shoot, and is compatible with your other gear, giving you freedom to create your own perspective. Look no further. Platypod Ultra does it all. Visit platypod.com for more info.